And the first sentence is finished. And that's what I do. So now I outline this and I can see everything and I know where everything is and I have the expectation of, I can break it down on a matter of now this I say and testify in the Lord. So now this I say and testify in the Lord. Ooh. All right. Come on, Paul. So I know he's saying something, but not just saying something, but he's speaking of something through experience. Because as he speaks through experience, that's where let me come here. Where's my pencil? Highlight, annotate. See, that's where this testifying comes in at, right? He testifies right there. That's that experience. Because our testimony is the experience. In all things that we do, it's an experience. So we're hearing now that he's saying, now this I testify. What is he testifying? It's the facts of what he was saying up before. And we're going into like what the new life is all about. That's why we have boom and boom right there, that title. So I testify in the Lord. And so it's not in himself. It's not anything that he's done. He's saying what I am saying. So I'm speaking from a learned experience, and this is my testimony. And in the Lord, so not in myself, not by myself, but everything I'm testifying about, everything I've experienced, I testify. And I do so, right here, see that? In the Lord. I'm giving all of this, my experiences and everything that I do and the goodness that I want to speak about. It's all in the Lord. That you, we're talking about who he's writing to, the Ephesians, must no longer walk as the Gentiles walk. Now, the Gentiles were seen as unclean, unbelievers, right? So whenever you see that, that's what it means. So the Gentiles, you no longer walk as a Gentile. Used to, before you have Christ in you, you walked as a Gentile. We all did. We all walked as Gentiles. But you must no longer walk. You must no longer act. You must no longer think, right? So this is your actions and your thinking must change when you get to this point. No longer act, walk, think as the Gentiles do, because that's how they presently are. Gentiles don't know the Lord. You do know the Lord. Gentiles don't. So now that you know the Lord and you know the goodness of him, you have experience with him, you have the experience, just like Paul does. So now we're going to not do what we used to do. We're not going to do the things that we know we're not supposed to do, right? So in the futility of their minds. So this is not just in them, but it's ingrained in their minds. Isn't that something? It's not just what they do, it's who they are. Who they are. It's inside of them. It's their mind. It goes deeper than it goes deep into their person. So, and we're not supposed to act that way. That's what Paul's telling these people. And it comes to us too, because we're the believers now of today. And this is true for all believers throughout time. So you, come on. I'm telling you. This I say and testify. And I'm testifying in the Lord whom we can trust, because there's no lying in him. He is God. He can't lie. Right? That you must no longer walk. You must no longer act or think as the Gentiles, the unsaved person, the unsaved, how you used to be. As those people that don't know God, who are called the enemies of God in the Psalms. Because we're all once enemies. And don't do what they do. No longer think. Don't do what they do. Because their minds, it's futile. It's futile. All that you do is futile. It's worth nothing. Right? It's worth nothing. And it's the futility of their minds. So the things that you think are nothing, Gentiles, are nothing, unbelievers. Your mind is corrupt, and it's who you are. Your mind is who you are, and it's all who you are. And I want you to remember that this is just the first part of this sentence, part of this structure. So now we understand, we're getting, wow, just a little bit out of this. So verse 18, they are darkened in their understanding. They cannot see in their understanding. Understanding is intellect, it's mind. So their mind that we see, this understanding is the mind, their intellect. And their intellect is dark. And you know how it is when you're in a dark room and you cannot see, you can't see anything, you don't know where anything is. It's empty. It's empty. And that darkness, it's alienated. Wait, even before I go there, I want you to see this darkness is matched with the futility of their minds. Because remember, this futility is meaning nothing. It means nothing. Back in King Solomon, he said it this way. He said it's all vanity. It's purposelessness. Purposelessness. And that's all that's there. And that's what he's asking back then. King Solomon was vanity, oh vanity. You know, everything that he sees after he lived this lavishing life, he finds that there's no purpose to it without God. And here we are seeing this is the mind of the Gentile. It's in that purposelessness state. Their minds are darkened. There is no understanding. There's nothing there. And then that purposelessness comes back down. Let me use another color here. So this here, this futility, this pointlessness, this purposelessness leads to alienation. The alienation of the mind from the life of God. Because God wants us to live with him, right? But because of our own thinking, because of our lack of knowing who he is, and because of these things, we are now considered what? Enemies of God. Yes? Second time I've said that. Now I'm going to say it again. We are considered to be the enemies of God. And that is so important for us to catch. So important for us to see. So because now here, we can't see the lifestyle of God, the life of God, because of the ignorance that is in them. They can't see it. We can't see it if we're not believers because of ignorance. But that ignorance is, look at this, the lack of their understanding, right? But in this case, the ignorance in here, in this context of the Greek words that's being used, is the willfulness, right? There's a willingness. Hope I spelled that right. But the willingness of ignorance, the willingness of blindness. They're doing it willing. They don't want anything to do with God. They are rejecting him. So because of the ignorance that they are, in the willingness of this ignorance, and the willingness of them staying blind, because they are rejecting God, they have become the enemies of God. It's a willing separation. And that is due to the hardness of their hearts. Due to the hardness of their hearts. And that says a lot. That says a lot about how we are before we know God. That says a whole lot. So if we are going to be the enemies of God because of our hardness of hearts, and it's willing, we got to look back in James chapter 4, verse 4. James chapter 4, verse 4. This is a previous sermon I've already had, and I've already taught on this, but James chapter 4, verse 4. Here it is, right here. It says, "You adulterous people, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God?" And that word enmity, right? It means enemy. Isn't that something? You become the enemy of God That's what you've become. And I have this from Matthew 6:24. Matthew 6:24 says, "No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money." Well, we're talking about this word hate, right? This word hate and despise, right? It's that hatred. It's not, and then we have this contrast of love and devotion. You're going to love one master and you're going to hate another. It's that comparison. So you're either going to love God or you're going to love the enemy. You're going to love the devil. You're going to fall for his traps. 19. They have become callous and they have given themselves up to sensuality, greedy to practice every kind of impurity. And this is where we find right here. They have become callous, right? And that's from the hardening of their heart that we've seen previously. The hardening of their hearts on purpose. And they have become calloused. That means they have no shame. They've given up the pursuit of God for to do what they want to do. And their conscience at this point, their conscience is dead. A dead conscience. Which means they're doing whatever they want. There's no recollection of who God is, and they don't care. And their minds have been seared. And I like that word, but that whole seared comes from the idea in 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 2.